thank you very much. I have a massive challenge to wrap up a very inspiring discussion on the business model related to that. We hear a lot about sustainable sourcing, pressure from the industry on the different landscape. Actually, we've been discussing about that, and what we found out is that currently the way the business is done is not very helping what we're trying to looking for. Is not very efficient to promote a responsible and fully zero deforestation supply chain. And we raised up a lot of constraint that business as usual today generates on the path forward deforestation. First, the level of trust between players is very low, so it's very critical. The players do not trust themselves, and as we know, in the very complex supply chain that we are talking about, soybean, palm oil, pulp and paper, and so on, there's so much players involved that we must generate more transparency, more trust between players. So that was the first point, and when we're talking about these commodities, this raw material is mostly based on the spot market. The business as usual is mostly based on commodities and spot markets, and that do not generate a long-term approach. Basically, the spot market is on the daily basis. So that's the first constraint that we need to unlock if we want to ensure zero deforestation and responsible supply chain. And then we had the question of science-based data. Today there's a lack of science-based data. There's a lack of consensus on the definition on deforestation that is applicable to all the different landscape that we are talking about. So companies do not know which data they have to take, and do not trust for fact the players they are buying from. It's mostly based on risk management, as the company are mostly targeted by external third party, and they are acting as risk, as they must act as an opportunity. And actually, there is also the question of who is paying for a more responsible supply chain, because it could be at the beginning, it could require the investment. So that was the first part of our discussion to raise the constraint, and we then moved to some part of solution, only part of solution that we have been discussing. Obviously, there needs to be more partnership between players, moving from commodity to specialty to premium model, to generate more long-term approach with players that will encourage trust between players, to work in a larger, broader stakeholders involving local governments, NGOs, and to work to work smarter all together, and to also to work in more open data and in order to share the responsibility all along the supply chain, take into account that one player cannot make extra business out of the other, and the costs of implementation of a responsible supply chain must be shared by all the players, including the consumer. Talking about the consumer, there's also one part which is not the least, but there's also a need of increasing the awareness of consumers so that they can put pressure on the brand they are buying from, and also the need for the consumer to reduce, to reduce their consumption, because that's also part of the fight against deforestation. And last but not least, we raised the point that radical approach is not efficient. Sustainable approach means to work better together and to generate partnership on the long term.